Sixth Dwelling, Chapters 7 and 8. Those of you friends who have not yet attained these uncommon blessings from God might think that the souls who have received these special favors must be so secure that they have nothing to lament, no fears, no imperfections, and can just relax into enjoying the beloved forever. Those of you who have experienced these particular states will know what I'm about to say. It would be a mistake to think that these states of prayer bring an end to suffering. On the contrary, the more you receive from God, the more it hurts to see where you have missed the mark. I myself believe that this pain will never go away until we reach the place where nothing can disturb us. It's true that sometimes this pain hurts more intensely than at other times. Sometimes it carries one flavor, other times a different one. But the soul is not thinking about the suffering she must undergo to pay for her mistakes. What she is concerned about is that she has been ungrateful to the one to whom she owes so much, who so clearly deserves to be served by her, to be adored. As God reveals his greatness to the soul, her awareness of this plenitude is expanded. She is shocked by how brazen she has been. Her lack of respect makes her cry. The foolish mistakes of her past strike her as so flagrant, she cannot stop grieving over them. She can't bear it when she remembers how she turned away from so great a beloved for such a meaningless thing. Her own folly is much more prominent in her consciousness than her recollection of the favor she receives, no matter how beautiful these blessings may have been and still are. It's as if a mighty river were running through the soul. Sometimes it brings a wave of sweetness. Sometimes the bitterness of the soul's own perfections cling to her banks like a bitter slime. It's the bitterness she remembers, and this is a heavy cross to bear. I know a certain person who used to wish to die so that she could see God. Then she started wishing to die so that she could be free from the unrelenting pain she was feeling about ever having been ungrateful to the one who had been so good to her. She didn't think that anyone else's wickedness could match up to hers. After all, she reasoned, look at how much God had to put up with from her, and for how long. And look how bountifully he has blessed her anyway. Souls in this state have no fear of the underworld. Occasionally, they are afraid that they might offend God, and this disturbs them deeply. But their anxiety is focused on the possibility that God might release them from his hand and that they will turn around and offend him, plunging them into as miserable a condition as they were in before he bestowed his blessing. They don't care one bit about their own pain or glory. Their own reason for not wanting to linger in limbo has nothing to do with a reluctance to suffer. It's that they cannot be with God in that place. No matter how favored by God a soul may be, I wouldn't consider it safe for her to forget all about the wretched state she used to be in. As upsetting as this can feel, reflecting on it can benefit other souls. It could be that I hold this opinion because I myself have been so wicked that I just can't forget it. Those of you who have been good will not have to carry this pain, although as long as we live in earthly bodies, we will make mistakes. The belief that our beloved has already forgiven our transgressions and forgotten all about them offers no relief. In fact, it has the opposite effect on the soul at this stage. Reflecting on the infinite goodness of God, who grants such remarkable blessings to someone who has not even come close to earning them, only fuels the fire of her suffering. It may occur to you that any soul who has enjoyed exalted states has no use for meditating on specific things like the sacred humanity of Jesus Christ. Isn't this a soul who is already immersed in pure loving? I have written about this subject elsewhere and have been accused of not knowing what I was talking about. These critics suggest that the beloved leads us along certain paths, and that once a soul has passed through the beginning stages of prayer, it's better for her to meditate on formless divinity and stay away from earthly images. No matter how eloquently they may contradict me, they can't get me to admit that this abstract practice is a good thing. Some souls have convinced themselves that they are incapable of thinking about the Passion, visualizing the Blessed Mother, or reflecting on the qualities of the saints. I cannot imagine what their problem is. Remembering the holy ones who came before us can be very inspiring and encouraging. It isn't possible for those of us in mortal bodies to remain in a perpetual state of transcendence over corporeal things, burning night and day in the fire of pure divine love. That's for angelic spirits, not for human beings. It's important for us to think about, talk to, and cultivate real relationships with those who once lived on this earth and accomplished great things for God. It's even more important to stay connected to Christ, in whom lies all our good and all our help. Quite a few people have told me that the Beloved brought them into a state of pure contemplation and that they just wanted to stay there forever. This is impossible to do. Still, something of the blessing the Beloved bestows stays inside the soul so that afterwards she can't really engage in descriptive meditation about the mysteries or the Passion and the life of Christ anymore. I don't know why, but this inability to meditate is a very common effect of the depth of contemplation. I believe that this is because discursive meditation is all about seeking God, and that once God has been found, the soul doesn't see any reason to wear herself out searching for Him through the limited intellect when the will can take her straight to Him. Why use the cumbersome faculty of reason when the generous faculty of will is already on fire? There is nothing wrong with setting the intellect aside for a while, but it is impossible to avoid altogether, at least until the soul reaches the final two dwellings. In fact, the soul will lose time trying to bypass the mind. The will often needs the assistance of the intellect to enkindle it. This is an important point, friends, so pay attention. The soul desires to be wholly engaged in loving and doesn't want to be distracted by anything else. But no matter how badly she might want this exclusive focus, she can't have it that way. Although she will stay alive, the flame that fueled it will start to burn out. Someone has to blow on the embers if it's going to radiate heat. Would it be a good idea for a soul suffering from this kind of empty aridity to wait for fire to come down from heaven and burn up the sacrifice she has made of herself to God, like our father Elijah did? No, definitely not. It's not right for the soul to expect miracles either. Remember, the Beloved works miracles in the soul when He chooses. I don't think He wants us to go around thinking we're entitled to blessings on demand. He wants us to stay mindful of our limitations and help ourselves in every way we can. I myself believe that this is a healthy attitude to maintain until we die, no matter how sublime our heights of prayer may be. It is true that anyone the Beloved brings to the seventh dwelling rarely, if ever, needs to practice discursive meditation. If I can remember, I will explain why this is the case when we get to that place. A soul in this state walks with Christ in a wondrous way, communing with both his human nature and his divinity. But when the fire in the will grows cold and the soul no longer feels God's presence, she must actively seek it. This is what the bride does in the Song of Songs, and this is what His Majesty wants us to do. Let us ask the creatures who it is that made them, as St. Augustine did in his Meditations. I believe, or was it his Confessions? Why sit around waiting for God to bestow on us what He gave us before? In the early stages of our practice of prayer, God may wait for a year or more to give us this fire, maybe many years. His Majesty knows why, and it's none of our business. We know the path to pleasing God. It lies in the commandments and the counsels. We should follow them diligently, reflecting on the life and death of Christ and in all that He has done for us. Let the rest come when the Beloved wills it. People in that state might argue that they can't pause to dwell on forms. Maybe they're right, in a way. We already know that it's one thing to reason with the discursive mind, and quite another for the memory to convey truths to the discursive mind. You might say that you don't understand what I'm talking about here, and it could be that I don't understand the matter well enough myself to explain it adequately, but I'll do the best I can. When I talk about discursive meditation, what I mean is extended intellectual reflection, intentional spiritual thought. For example, we may be thinking about the favor of God granted to us by giving us His only Son. We don't stop there. We go on to consider the mysteries of Christ's whole glorious life. Maybe we begin by musing on His prayer in the garden and follow it through with our minds all the way to His death on the cross. Or maybe we pick an episode of the Passion, like the arrest, for instance. We meditate on this mystery, exploring all the things there are to think and feel about it, such as the betrayal of Judas and the flight of the apostles. This kind of prayer is admirable and virtuous. Those whom God has elevated to supernatural states of perfect contemplation claim that they can no longer practice this kind of prayer. They are correct. I just don't know why. But I do not think such a person is right if she says that she never dwells on the mysteries at all, especially if she is present when the church celebrates these things. It isn't possible for a soul who has received so much from God to forget all about the forms either. So many precious signs of love. These are the living sparks that ignite the soul more ardently in her love of our beloved. The soul does not understand these mysteries in any kind of ordinary way. She knows them in a transcendent, perfect way. The first thing the mind does is to picture some holy scene and then stamp it into the memory so that the mere sight of our beloved Christ fallen to his knees in the garden, drenched in that terrible sweat, is enough to occupy the intellect not only for an hour, but for many days. We look with a simple gaze at who he is. We acknowledge how unconscious we have been in the face of such suffering. Soon the will responds. Maybe it is not moved with profound suffering, but at least with a simple urge to serve, to offer some kind of compensation for such a great favor, and to suffer something for the one who has suffered so much for us. Other desires like this get triggered in the will, corresponding to whatever it is in the mind and memory are dwelling on. The deep tenderness this stirs in the soul might make her think she can go no further in discursive meditation on the Passion. This inability to think makes her think she will never be able to think again. If a person is not already doing this meditation practice, she should try it. I promise that it will not be an obstacle to higher prayer. In fact, I think it would be a big mistake to avoid it. If while she is involved in discursive meditation, the beloved decides to suspend the intellect, that is well and good. He will be making her transcend the mind in spite of herself. If this happens, the soul should not consider it to be a problem, but a great help toward everything that is good. The problem would arise if she labored hard with her intellect at that point. I do believe that discursive meditation is impossible for souls who advance to this state of prayer. Maybe some souls could still practice it in that place. God does lead souls by many paths, but souls who travel the road of the mind should not condemn those who bypass it or judge them as being incapable of appreciating the mysteries encompassed by our good Jesus Christ. On the other hand, no one, no matter how spiritual he may be, is going to get me to believe that intentionally turning away from these mysteries is beneficial either. Some beginners on the spiritual path, and even some advanced practitioners, attain the prayer of quiet, drink in the sweetness there, and then decide that they should stay in that state permanently. Take my advice, let it go. It is neither good nor even possible to remain perpetually absorbed. Life is long and filled with strife. We need to look to Christ as our role model. See how he handled his trials. Look at his disciples and saints. How did they bear their burdens? Allow them to teach us to bear ours more perfectly. Christ is too good a companion for us to turn away from him and his most blessed mother. He is pleased when we grieve over his suffering, even if it means neglecting our own comfort and convenience. Anyway, friends, consolations in prayer are not such a common occurrence. that they eclipse everything else. I would be suspicious of anyone who claimed that her bliss was continuous. I mean, anyone who claims that she is too busy being absorbed all the time to reflect on Christ's passion. You should be suspicious too. Strive to free yourselves from such an error and resist absorption with all your might. If your own efforts are not enough, ask for the opportunity to serve, dedicating yourself to a task that required such care and concentration that this danger will naturally melt away. Continuous absorption can be dangerous for your brain and head. I think that by now I've conveyed to you that no matter how spiritual a soul may be, it's not wise to reject all corporal forms. Meditating on the holiness of humanness is not unholy. Some people try to remind us that Christ told his disciples that it was appropriate for him to leave them. I can't stand this interpretation. I bet you anything he didn't say this to his most blessed mother. She was solid in her faith. She knew he was both God and man. Although she loved him even more than the disciples did, her love was so perfect that his form was not an obstacle, but a vehicle for liberation. The faith the disciples had must have been a little shaky in the beginning. It became stronger later, and those of us alive now have even greater reason to have firm faith. I tell you, friends, this is a dangerous path. The spirit of evil will try to lead us away from our devotion to the most blessed mystery of Christ's humanity. The mistake I used to make wasn't quite this extreme. What I did was that I stopped taking delight in the thoughts of Christ and instead waited around for absorption and the consolation it brings. Then I realized clearly that I was on the wrong track. Since it's not possible to sustain a state of absorption, my thoughts went flitting around all over the place. My soul felt like a bird flying around and around, unwilling or unable to alight anywhere, losing a lot of time, not making any progress in virtue or improvement in the practice of prayer. I couldn't understand why I was unable to focus. It seemed to me that what I was doing was correct. Finally, one day, I talked to a person who was a servant of God and explained my method of prayer. He gave me some helpful advice, which clearly demonstrated how mistaken I had been. I couldn't help but regret that there was ever a time when I failed to realize that my great loss of tangible imagery of Christ and the path that he had to take could never result in gain. And even if I could get something out of it, I wouldn't want it unless it came through him from whom all real blessings come to us. May he be praised forever. Amen. Chapter 8. I have told you, friends, that the further a soul journeys on her path, the more she finds herself accompanied by the good Jesus. When His Majesty wills it, we can't do anything other than walk with Him all the time. All you have to do is look around you to see that this is true. Doesn't His Majesty communicate Himself to us in wonderful visions and other manifestations? Isn't it obvious that He loves us? If the Beloved grants you any of the favors I'm about to describe, and if He grants me the ability to describe them with any success, I don't want you to be afraid. Praise Him. Praise Him even if He doesn't grant you these favors. What we are doing is giving thanks that He who is filled with all majesty and all power is pleased to communicate like this with a creature. It may happen that while this soul is not in any way expecting it, she will feel the presence of Christ beside her. She sees him with neither the eyes of the body nor the eyes of the soul. This is called an intellectual vision. I don't know why. I saw that God had granted this favor to a certain person. She was frightened at first because, since she couldn't see anything, she didn't know what was happening to her. She did know with absolute certainty, however, that it was Christ. Though invisible to the senses, he revealed himself so clearly that she could not doubt that it was him. What I mean is, she could not doubt that she was having this vision and that the experience itself was real. What she couldn't be sure about was whether or not the experience was from God. Even though the effects strongly indicated that it was, she still worried. She had never heard of an intellectual vision. She never suspected that there was such a thing. But she realized that Christ had been talking with her all along. Until the Beloved granted her this favor, she never knew who it was that had been speaking with her, though she understood the words. It's not a visual revelation, which passes very quickly. It can last for many days, sometimes even more than a year. This woman I am speaking about went to her spiritual adviser quite disturbed. He asked her how she knew that it was Christ who was with her, since she didn't actually see anything. He demanded that she describe his face, but she explained that she never saw any face. She said that she had already told him everything she could. All she knew was that he was the one who had been speaking to her all along and that the vision was real. Although other people tried to sow seeds of doubt in her heart, they could not sprout. She was incapable of doubt, especially when Christ said to her, "Be not afraid, it is I." These words had such power that from then on her confidence in the authenticity of the vision was unshakable. It strengthened her and had left her glad for such excellent companionship. She saw clearly how this vision helped her walk with continual remembrance of God. It seemed that the Beloved was always looking at her, and so she avoided doing anything that might displease him. When she had the urge to speak to His Majesty, in prayer or outside it, she sensed that he was so near that he couldn't help but hear her. It's not as if she could listen to his words whenever she wanted to, but he spoke to her at unexpected times when she needed it. She felt him walking at her right side. She didn't experience this with ordinary senses that tell us there is someone next to us, but in a subtler, more delicate way that transcends explanation. Yes, it is absolutely unmistakable. This vision leaves the soul even more certain than other revelations. The ones that come in the form of sensory imagery can deceive us. Deception is not possible with an intellectual vision. The effects it creates inside the soul are so beneficial that the spirit of evil could never be responsible for them. The experience could not be the result of mental imbalance either. The soul is washed with profound serenity. All she wants is to please God, and she rejects anything that does not lead her to Him. Later, this woman I've been telling you about attained a clear realization that her vision did not come from the spirit of evil, and this became increasingly apparent as her journey unfolded. Still, I do know that at times this woman felt intensely confused and afraid because she couldn't figure out why such a goddess had come to her. The reason I know about this is that she and I were so close, nothing happened in her soul that I didn't know about, and so I'm a reliable witness. Believe me, everything I have said is true. This radical humility and awe are favors from the Beloved. If the vision came from the spirit of evil, it would have the opposite effects. The soul understands that this is a gift from God and that no human effort could create the experience. The person going through it can in no way mistake it for her own, but knows it to be a gift from the hand of God. In my opinion, some of the other experience we've talked about are more sublime, but this one bears with it special knowledge of God. The constancy of divine companionship gives rise to a most tender love for His Majesty. It intensifies the soul desire to surrender herself completely to serving Him. It awakens a more profound purity of consciousness because the presence at her side makes her more sensitive to everything. We already know, of course, that God is present in all that we do, but it is in our nature to lose sight of this fact. In a vision like this, it's impossible to forget because the Beloved Himself awakens the soul to the divine presence beside her. As the soul's love for the one she knows to be walking with her grows more real and more constant, the other favors we've talked about become more common as well. On the whole, the value of vision is proven by the wonderful ways the soul grows as a result of it. The soul is deeply grateful to the Beloved for bestowing such a blessing on someone who hasn't earned it. She wouldn't exchange this gift for any treasure or pleasure on earth. When the beloved decides to take the vision away, the soul feels terribly lonely, but all the effort she could possibly make would not bring back that sweet companionship. The beloved gives it when he wills it to be given. It cannot be acquired, but only humbly received. Sometimes, by the way, the vision is of some saint, and this kind of companion can be very helpful to us too. If she can't see anything, how can the soul know that this presence is Christ, or his most glorious mother, or a saint? The soul will not be able to explain it. She herself does not understand how she knows it with such absolute certainty. It's easier to identify Christ when he speaks, but even when it's a saint who appears and doesn't say a word, the soul knows that he has been sent by the beloved to be her companion and help her. Isn't that marvelous? There are all kinds of spiritual experiences that cannot be explained, but they teach us about the limitations of our nature and highlight the sublime wonders of God. We can't figure these things out. All we can do is receive them with gratitude and awe. Since the beloved does not grant these blessings to everyone, the soul should cherish them whenever they come and strive to do greater service, knowing that it is God who enables her to serve. In this way, she realizes that being the recipient of such grace does not make her superior over others. In fact, she sees herself as being more inept than anyone on earth when it comes to serving God, and that no one else has a greater obligation to serve Him than she does. Any fault that she commits pierces her to the core of her being, and rightly so. Any of you whom the Beloved leads along this path will recognize the effects I've been describing. These are what will convince you that this vision is not a delusion or a fantasy. Remember, a vision brought on by a spirit of evil could never last so long or leave the soul with such wondrous benefits, clothing her in a deep inner peace. Something so bad could never do something so good, even if it wanted to. If the vision came from an evil source, the soul would immediately start putting on some outward show, trying to convince everyone of how much more important and spiritual she is than anybody else. Instead, the soul goes around hopelessly attached to the beloved, her thoughts totally centered on him. This enrages the spirit of evil, which may lash out and try to deceive her again, but not often. Besides, God is so faithful that he will protect a soul whose only goal is to please his majesty and devote her entire life to his honor and glory. He will not let evil penetrate her, nor will he allow her to be deceived. My point is, and will continue to be this: these favors from God inspire the soul to walk with beauty and grace, which inspires him to give her even more. If he sometimes allows the spirit of evil to challenge the soul, he will make sure that the evil one is defeated. And so, friends, if any of you travels this road, do not be afraid. At the same time, it's a good thing to stay alert and step with care, because if you become overconfident, you could stumble and fall. Check to see if the effects of the vision harmonize with what I've told you about. If not, this is a sign that the vision probably does not come from God. In the beginning, it's better to share this experience only with someone you trust and keep it confidential. It should be an intelligent person who has studied broadly, because people of learning can shed light on these things. It's best to speak with a deeply spiritual person, but if there is no such person around, then seek out the educated one. A person who is both educated and spiritual, of course, would be ideal. If they tell you the vision is a fantasy, don't worry. A fantasy may not help much, but it can't harm you either. Throw yourself at the mercy of the Divine Majesty, asking that He not let you be deceived. If they tell you that your vision comes from the spirit of evil, you have something to worry about. But anyone with any real spiritual sensitivity will know from the effects the vision has produced in you when this is not the case. If he says such a thing anyway, I know that the friend who walks with you will console and reassure you, and that he will illuminate the heart of your confidant so that he, in turn, may illuminate you. Maybe the person advising you has a cultivated spiritual practice of his own. So what? If he has not yet been led by the beloved along this path, then what you tell him will scare him and he will judge you hastily. That's why I'm recommending that you choose someone who is both knowledgeable and wise. Even though it may seem like all is well with you, people who care about you should encourage you to seek this counsel if you feel you need it, for your sake and for theirs. Once you have consulted with the appropriate person, be still and don't keep talking about it. Sometimes, even when the soul has nothing to fear, the spirit of evil stirs such doubts in her that she cannot be satisfied with a single consultation. At other times, if her adviser hasn't had much experience, a soul like this may scare him and he will belabor the point and even turn something that should have been kept a secret into a public spectacle. When this happens, it opens the soul to persecution and torment. There she was, thinking she had confided in only one person, and it turns out that the whole world knows about her private vision. Judging from the way things are going these days, I could anticipate that a drama like this could attract many problems, not only to her as an individual, but to her spiritual community as a whole. I recommend a high degree of discretion, both to the soul who has had this vision and to her spiritual guide. Also, remember that just because someone you may be advising has had a spiritual experience of this kind, it doesn't make her any more special than anyone else. The Beloved sees what each of us needs and guides us accordingly. Assuming we can cooperate, the purpose of this journey is to make us better servants of God. Sometimes it's the weakest among us whom God leads along this path, so we have no reason to either approve or condemn them. Our only valid criteria for judgment are the virtues in the soul who is serving God. Is she humble, detached from personal desires, and is her conscience pure? If so, she is holy. Yet here on earth there is very little we can know with certainty. We have to wait until the true judge gives each of us what we deserve. In heaven, we will be surprised to discover how different his judgment is from what we thought it would be in this life. May he be forever praised. Amen.